Do you know what that is? Listen again. Can you guess? It's a Pose RC3. Ah, a little blast from the past there, huh? Dork. These are awesome. If you can find them that are actually built pretty good. That's kind of hard to do, unfortunately. One day I might actually make some of these. They're not that hard as far as design. And pretty heavy. Cast pretty good too. And man, do these things thump in the water. But you don't overpower these. So if you're a fast fisherman, this is probably going to be your bait. I'll tell you that now. Speaking of that, are you ready to run and gun? It's time for blast off. Let's go. Hey guys, Todd here. Welcome back to Bassin 101. We are in part 2 of crankbaits. How to choose crankbaits. Now, I explained in the last episode, are you a fast cranker or are you a slow cranker? There's going to be crankbaits that are better or worse for you in certain scenarios. Maybe some of you have already laid some of your baits out on the kitchen table or in your shop or garage or whatever, maybe on the deck of your boat, and you've gathered the ones that catch you the most fish. Is there a similarity? I mean, are they all fat baits? Are they all thin baits? Are they all shallow runners, deep runners, rattles, silent? Wild colors like chartreuses and bright reds and stuff like that? Or are they more natural colors like shads? A lot of times color depends on your confidence level. But I tend to choose mine as far as water clarity, or maybe just to give them something different. But that's a whole nother category. Today, I kind of want to shine a light a little bit on the thinner crankbaits. Don't let this fool you. Okay? I mean, I design baits and build them myself too. I cracked the crankbait code years and years ago as far as body shape, lip angle, line tie placement. I cracked that code years ago. I had to do it the hard way. I had to learn it. So I can look at a bait and almost tell you what it's going to do. Okay? 9 times out of 10. I don't care if anybody tells you they're 100% of the time when they guess it, they wrong. Okay? This bait thumps. Okay? It's not just because it's a thin body bait like a Shad Wrap, and it has this coffin bill, which was big in the 80s. This was the first baits with these coffin bills. This started the whole craze. This does not work like a Shad Wrap. Okay, this has got a pretty wide wobble. And it actually doesn't really wobble. It has more of a roll like this to it. More of a head roll. But if you're trying to pull this thing as hard as you can, it's going to knock you in the water because this thing is going to pull against you pretty bad. The RC1, which is the shallower version of this, not that bad, but it's also a massively wide wobbling bait. This is too. So, again, if you're a guy that likes to burn a crankbait, this is not for you. Shad Wraps will be more of your style. Okay, but it doesn't have the reflection quality of cover like this does. This is not going to get hung up as bad as a Shad Wrap. Not only that, the lip angle is different. They say these run 6 to 8 feet deep. I usually get about 5 or 6 out of these. It just depends on your line size. And again, how fast you crank it. With these, the faster you run them, the shallower they run. And they also run kind of, and you don't want that. Okay? So thin body baits. There's a lot of different ways of looking into something like that because they're all going to have their own untypical kind of action, okay? Like I said, Shad Wrap, thin, and it runs narrow. This, thin, but it has a wider wobble to it. All you can do is experiment. I mean, you know, for those of you just starting out, you ain't got to worry about these. These have been gone for 30 years, so don't worry about these. You can find them on eBay if you want to play with them. Absolutely. And you can get them pretty decent price. Just make sure that when you get it, first thing you want to do with these baits is take your finger and see if you can't go sideways. Go sideways. See if you can move that lip and listen. If you don't hear anything and can't move it, you're good to go. But you know how many of these I've got brand new out of the package and literally just went, pull the lip out. Sorry, pose. It is what it is. Now, thin body crankbaits. There's a lot of different ways of looking at that because there's so many different versions of it. Okay, so here's some examples when I'm talking about thin body baits. Here's a thin body bait that has your typical round type diving bill to it. This bait right here, very tight. I mean, really tight wiggle. If you're a fast cranker, you're not going to feel this lure. If you're a slow cranker, you're going to feel this lure a little bit better. Another one's a shallow runner. Again, thin body bait. This runs about 4, maybe 5 feet deep. And with the lip angle on this, with the design, this is a little bit wider wiggle to it, but not much. So if you're a fast burner, this is a good bait. These type of baits are really good for that, with this kind of bill and everything else, so keep that in mind. If you're a finesse guy, great finesse type bait because you can really feel it in the water. There's your old reliable, the old Shad Wrap. Again, this can go both ways, okay? Fast or slow cranker. This kind of bait can go both ways. Little teeny tiny little dudes. These baits right here have pretty tight wiggle to them. You can kind of go by the type of bill and the angle. So that's something to consider too. These are very small baits. Spinning rods will work, but you can also throw them on light bait casting tackle too. But again, this is good for a burner, but if you're a finesser, these kind of baits are really good too. Another one, really thin. These are about 3/8. Deep diver. This thing runs about 6-7 feet deep on about 8-pound test. Usually rough fish he's on about 8-pound test. And very tight wiggle. However, it's a little bit wider than a Shad Wrap. So if you're a burner, I've never burned this bait, to be honest with you. So I really can't give you an honest opinion as far as burning it. But you know, these type baits here, or if you're a slow cranker, these are dynamite, okay? And here's a blast from the past. This is one of my baby dolls right here. There's an early 70s Rebel. Now this one rattles. Thin bait with a line tie in the bill. So this is going to be a little bit wider type of wobble. You know, you're not going to have 2 feet, 3 feet out of this bait. You're not very much. But if you're a burner, these are not bad. Okay, but if you're a finesse fisherman, this is going to stay up and pretty shallow. Okay, you could almost use it as a jerk bait. So, you know, getting back to the bait of the day. You know, flat-sided crankbaits are by the way, none of these except for, well, the Pose, but except for the Rebel, none of these have a rattle in them. I mean, none. However, hooks and split rings do rattle. Keep that in mind. I think this is more of a natural sound, to be honest with you. Anyway, wanted to kind of throw this by you a little bit so you can kind of think. I think flat-sided baits are a good all-year bait. I know a lot of guys say, well, you know, you want to throw these things in the wintertime when the water's really cold, and you know, they want that real tight wiggle and everything else. Well, yeah, I can agree with you on that. Absolutely. but I've also caught my share of these in the summertime. Again, it's the mood of the fish. It's just the mood of the fish. They either want something that's just in the water, or they want something that just has a very small quiver. It's up to them. There is no rhyme or reason to throw one is tight versus one that has a wider wobbling action, but they're both thin. Think about that for a second. Same thing here. You got two different shallow running baits. Almost the same kind of lip. Almost the same kind of angle. However, being a little bit longer body versus a shorter, stubbier body, and it's also thinner than this one. This is a little bit tighter action than this one. Now, I'm not saying the thinner body gives it a tighter action, okay? It's the whole combination of lip versus the body. So, you know, like this one right here is very thin, 3/8. It's got a circuit board lip on that dude, and I consider this to be in between as far as action. It's kind of has more of a natural, almost like a Shad Wrap. This is very similar to a Shad Wrap, and personally I'd rather throw this over a Shad Wrap because this is just a little bit heavier. And I'm gonna tell you what, man, I've caught tons of bass off these things. I really have. If you're wondering what that is, this is a Tim Eric Dinky Dunker. Of all the flat baits I've got in my collection, as far as balsa baits, custom made balsa baits and stuff I've gotten from friends of mine over the country, all over the country and stuff, I have to say that Dinky Dunker is a bad dude. It really is. I've caught tons of fish on it, and believe it or not, off the red crawfish pattern in the spring, I caught 3 brown trout in a river, and of those 3 brown trout, they almost went 15 pounds. And they were on back to back to back casts in the same area. Isn't that crazy? That's the way things go sometimes. If I find that picture, I'll post it real quick, kind of give a picture of it. I have this look on my face like, what? Because it wouldn't even fit in the picture. I mean, that's a big brown trout. But anyway, I hope this helps you guys a little bit. I hope it kind of helps you understand the thin bait craze that everybody's kind of going for nowadays, especially with the custom balsa baits that are out there that you can find on Facebook and things like that. You can find them on the Tackle Box on Facebook. My buddy Davey runs that. I used to be mine, but I gave it to Davey. But they post a lot of stuff on there from custom bait makers as well. So definitely be sure to check that out. But, you know, that's about as simplified as I can get as far as flat baits go. It really is. You just have to try them. It's the same as any crankbait, because you might find some baits that fit the way you crank, and then you find others that doesn't fit the way you crank. And that's the whole entire deal of this crankbait series, is helping you find the crankbaits that fit you the best. Because if you don't like throwing them, you're not going to catch any fish on them. And you're definitely not going to be throwing them because they're going to be sitting in your box. So try them out. You know, get a few here and there. Try them out. If you're new into cranking, it never hurts to experiment. It really doesn't. Just don't go hog wild, okay? Because then you're going to be like the rest of us, have 100 million baits sitting around, and half of them even got hooks on them because you done robbed them all, put them on something else. That never happens. So anyway, until next time, guys, make sure you tell your friends. Make sure you hit the click button and subscribe. Bell notifications so you always know when something else pops up here. And I guess that's going to do it for me on this episode. So tight lines to everybody. May the Father bless you and keep you in Yeshua's name. And as always, fish on.